Nico, it's great to have you in the studio today.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
So tell me all about what does Propel do?
Propel is a data API platform for developers and engineering teams, not just data teams, to build customer-facing analytics into web and mobile apps using their Snowflake data.
That's awesome. So that type of platform, you're probably, crunching all sorts of different kinds of data.
Yeah.
Give me some examples of some data that you work with.
Yeah, if you imagine a SaaS application or a consumer app that needs to build a dashboard for their customer-facing experience, you can imagine something like the LinkedIn Insights, the Shopify dashboard. Like those are the experiences that we want to power. For that, you need a platform that solves essentially three core requirements. You need low latency, you need an API, and you need a multi-tenant access control. And that's what Propel provides.
So it really seems like a platform like that, you need something like Snowflake that can handle an immense amount of data. Tell me more about how does Snowflake fit into that solution?
Yeah, so Snowflake acts as the core data cloud for that solution, where companies consolidate the data from all the different sources. They do all the transformations, they clean it up, and they get the data to like an analytical state, where you put Propel as an API layer on top, and then you serve it to your apps.
So tell me at a deeper level, what's kind of the architecture behind Propel that enables that low latency, multi-tenancy, for these web applications?
Yeah, absolutely. So we connect to our customers' Snowflake, where you already have your data, right? And we take a table and we connect it and put a high-speed and caching storage tier, access control tier, and the API tier on top. So essentially, you operationalize a table with Propel into that caching and high-speed storage tier.
So really looking at this architectural diagram here, it seems like Snowflake is a key part of your architecture.
Absolutely, because Snowflake is really where everything starts, right? Where all the data is, where all the transformations are done. Propel takes kind of like a finished table that needs to be exposed to an application.
And so in a application and architecture like this, you mentioned that it's a connected app. You're connecting to the customer's Snowflake instance. Yeah. Talk to me more about that. It really seems like I'm seeing more and more of this connected app architecture in the wild.
Yeah, and it's good to just to talk about what some of the customers are doing.
Yeah.
So, for example, we have a customer, Courier, who's a notifications API platform, who's centralized all their analytical data in Snowflake. So they send notifications across multiple different channels, and they care about open rates, click-through rates. This kind of like that's their domain, right? And that's the metrics that they track. So when we came in, they were finishing their Snowflake implementation, and they were wondering like, hey, can we use this data in our product? We can answer like this click-throughs and open rate questions, but ultimately we want to empower our customers to answer those questions for themselves. And that's exactly what we did. We connected to their Snowflake, we operationalized a couple of tables, and then we exposed that data via an API. And now all of their analytics are powered by Snowflake and Propel. And the beauty of it is that they did it first without having to hire and staff an entirely new data engineering team. And then they did it with a front-end engineer, which is kind of pretty magical.
That is a beautiful story. So let's see a demo of this today.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a dashboard for a SaaS application. Right. A project like this in a normal R&D organization takes like a quarter or two. It's a big project. And you need to stand up infrastructure. You need different types of skills on the team that manages this. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take that project that takes 2-3 months, and we're going to build it in the next 5 minutes. We're going to start with this. So Propelify is our demo app. It's an e-commerce theme, and this is the skeleton of the app. And what you're looking at here is a demo app built in Next.js. Plain vanilla. Our front-end engineer built this in like a day and a half. This is not the hard part, right? The hard part is that it doesn't have data, right? We see that all the charts are empty, right? The data is here. The data is in Snowflake, right? So you see our tables that are landing here in their relational state, the raw tables. We do a transformation to create this Propelify Sales Analytics. We do all the transformations in Snowflake. And this creates this wide table that is perfect for analytical use cases. And what we're going to do with Propel is that we're going to operationalize this table, put an API on top, and integrate it with our app in just a couple of minutes. So this is Propel. Here we show you the number of queries. All of the metrics and all the analytics that you see here in Propel are powered by Propel and Snowflake. We're going to go ahead and we've got one Snowflake instance created. We're going to go ahead and create a data source, show you how easy it is. And when we connect to Snowflake, we're leveraging a lot of the Snowflake primitives. We're leveraging the stages, the tasks, the streams. So what's doing here, Propel is going through and checking that all the permissions are correct and verifying that we can do everything that we need. So here we're good to go. We click next, we see, okay, we have access to these two. This is the table of interest, and we're done. Next, we're going to create a data pool. And the data pool is this high-speed storage tier that's a mirror of the table. When we create a data pool, first we choose our Snowflake connection, and we're going to call this sales, and we choose a table, right? You can decide what columns you bring. Maybe you need all the columns in your customer-facing application. Maybe you don't, right? So if we say, OK, we want to bring everything except email, because we don't need email for the analytical use case. You have to give it the primary timestamp of the table and the tenant ID. We use the tenant ID to enforce multi-tenant access control. In this case, it's going to be the merchant ID, and we're good to go. This will kick off a process that hydrates the cache. Here we've got one that is already hydrated. And that's the extent of kind of like data connection that you need to do. From there, this is more of the product work. We come here and say, OK, what are the metrics that we want to expose in our application? And by adding that semantic layer of the metrics, we ensure that all around your application, you're using the same definition. So I'm going to show you how we create, imagine like a sales metric based on our data pool. We're going to do a sum of total price. And this is where like the nuance of the data comes in, right? So let's imagine that only orders with status equals shipped count as sales, right? You want that in one place, not in 25 different places in your application. Then we choose what are those. This table has 48 different columns. We don't want to expose them all to our app. So we choose which dimensions we want to expose. So we want to do channel, device type, status, name, and category, right? So we can start with those. And you're good to go. Next, we go to the playground. This is a developer tool to help you build API requests. And you will notice that the APIs are opinionated APIs for analytical workloads. So we have a time series API, a counter API, a leaderboard API, where this is the GraphQL request and the variables. This is the visualization. This is the actual API response. And you can imagine how a front-end engineer can just take this JSON and run with it.
This playground really seems like incredibly useful for the developers that are integrating this into their front-end application.
Totally. Yeah. And it's also really useful for the product managers, because you can iterate here and really figure out what's the visualization that I want in my application before like even involving engineers and writing a bunch of code. Like you can really say, okay, no, we want to show the last 30 days, or we really want to show the last 90. And that's kind of more what we want to show in our app.
Now, I see that you're using GraphQL.
Yes.
Dive into that a little bit more. Why did you choose GraphQL as a layer on top of Snowflake for this?
Yeah, so GraphQL gives us a lot of advantages for the purpose of data APIs specifically. The first thing that GraphQL gives us is the ability to ask for what we need. So in REST, you make an API request and the server sends you the whole thing. In GraphQL, you ask for what you need. So for example, in some of our APIs, we can return the data in different formats. So depending on the charting library that you use, you ask for different formats. So if maybe you want only the values, not the labels. That's one. The second thing that's super powerful about GraphQL that I'll demo in a little bit is the ability to make multiple queries in a single request. If you're loading a dashboard, for example, in a customer-facing experience, it's not one query. It's probably like 10 to 15 queries, best case, right? And if you're firing those 15 requests, that's a lot of engineering work on the client side, but it's also not very efficient. We take one HTTP request with 15 queries, and then the cloud parallelizes that to respond as quickly as possible. And then I'd say lastly about GraphQL, the strongly typed nature of GraphQL is really powerful. And let me show you. So this is the counter API, which is a counter. It's exactly what you'd imagine. And then the leaderboard, you can say, hey, give me all the top categories. We're in the sales. And the beauty of the strongly typed nature is that the developer does not have to be an expert on like how the data is modeled. They can discover, it's like, hey, yep, this is what I need. And it's super, super easy. Here in Postman, you can see, for example, typical things that you want to do in your application. Show this month's revenue compared to last month's revenue, right? These type of things are super, super easy to do with Propel. So you have a counter with 2 queries for this month, for last month, and this is the result that you get. Similarly, you have a time series API, and you see the response times are all sub-second response times, a leaderboard, where you can see all the product categories, similar to the one that we showed. You have a reports API this one is interesting. Imagine if you wanted to do a reports by salesperson or report by product category. They could be 500 product categories. So we go through the work and we give you all the pagination built in. So these details end up taking a lot of development time that developers don't have to do when they're using the Propel APIs and Snowflake. This is the query that powers that application. It's 6 different queries that we can do in one single request. And what you'll notice is like super fast load times, right? And then you get all the data that you need in one go, super, super fast in this JSON. And what we're going to do here is that we're going to wire it back up to our application. This is the code of our app. I'm just going to uncomment this, and data should be flowing here momentarily. And then when you ship something, right? First thing you get is customer feedback, right? And customer says, great, I love the dashboard, but can you show me the sales by day instead of by month, right? And typically that's a process of like, oh, we need to go back and like re-engineer the entire pipeline and talk to like all these different engineering teams and like change the job and change this and change that. With Propel, the application teams are fully in control. So you can go to the code and say, instead of granularity month, I want to do granularity day. See what the customer thinks. Like, much better, right? You can see the anonymity right away. That's exactly what we need for our customers. So you're taking a process that takes months and months down to a couple of hours.
So this is an incredible platform that you've built. Tell me more about some of the key features of Snowflake that have really made an impact to the development of your product.
Yeah. So I would separate those in 2 kind of families. One is what helps our customers get the data ready for analytics, right? And two, what helps Propel work really, really well. On the first one, really excited about dynamic tables. It's helping customers get their data ready for analytics even like at incredible speeds. That what I showed where you land your raw tables and you need that like wide analytics table, golden for that. So very, very excited about that. And our customers are very excited about kind of simplifying their transformation tasks. For Propel, we rely heavily on the Snowflake primitives, including streams being kind of the centerpiece of everything. Understanding how the data changes, when the data changes, enables us to create that high-speed mirror of the data. And we rely heavily on tasks. We rely heavily on stored procedures. So we push a lot of the logic into Snowflake to keep that close to the data.
So that's beautiful. I mean, I see that over and over again where streams and tasks combined really make for getting that fast kind of interaction between your application and Snowflake to be snappy.
Yeah, totally.
And the ability to get, especially with Snowflake streams, the ability to see, incremental changes to data coming in really makes a big difference.
When you think about the customer-facing use cases, the data freshness is important, right? Sometimes, like if you do analytics for finance, like end of day is kind of like good enough, right? But if you're, in this case of a SaaS application doing e-commerce, you want to see it like pretty close to real time, right? So that's where like the streams come in. It's not like this batch process that runs every 24 hours that loads data. It's a continuous pipeline with zero engineering effort. That's the beauty. So
tell me, over the next 6 to 12 months, what should your customers get most excited about?
A couple of things. We're obviously continuing to expand our APIs. I even have some of the beta APIs that we have, some of the preview APIs here. The new API, one of it is a data grid to show like not only like aggregations, but the actual records that they'll keep in sync. If you show a time series and the records that make that time series, those two will be in sync in your application experience. A lot of the things that we hear from customers are, hey, I want customers to be able to ask their own questions in my product. So I can show them a dashboard, but then that doesn't answer all the questions. So the other preview that we have is a query builder API, so that you can build an experience where customers ask ad hoc questions. And then from a deployment model, one of the things that I think customers should be really excited about, and we are super excited about, is deploying the Propel platform as a Snowpark container.
Yes.
We're super, super thrilled about that possibility. And we started working on that, what that deployment would look like, started playing with the Snowpark containers, and it's just really powerful.
Absolutely. I mean, so Snowpark Container Services, I think, is a huge game changer. It's one of our latest announcements from Snowflake Summit recently. And, I think building this application as a container and deploying it inside of your customer's environment, it really brings a whole new level of security. It brings, it gives them the power to programmatically guarantee where their data resides, even in the caching layer.
Yeah, totally. And I'd go a step further, and what it does is that it opens the power of Snowflake to all developers in the organization that are not necessarily like in the data team or that have a Snowflake login, or it's like any developer. And when you look at the market and the amount of developers, there's give or take like 200,000 data engineers, right? There's 27 million developers, right? So unlocking the power of data, the power of Snowflake to all those developers with fairly powerful APIs, see what they can build. We're really, really excited about that.
Fantastic. I mean, not to mention also Snowflake native applications, right? When you combine the deployment model, the ease of install of Snowflake native applications for your customers with the ability to deploy it as a container, that's a game changer.
The native apps is totally a game changer because it's the delivery mechanism,
Yes.
right? And it lets us package those containers, configure those containers to have like a one-click install, right? And that's always been the problem of like the kind of cloud on-prem deployments. They're very heavy on services, right? They need like a lot of professional services. They need a lot of sales engineering to go deploy it and make them successful, right? With the native app framework, it's kind of like that on Rails.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. So I noticed also on your website, you have a relatively new service working with LLMs. Tell me more about that.
It's called LLM Analytics. And these LLM apps are special and are different from all the other apps that you build because they consume a very expensive resource, right? The large language model. Whether you host it or you use one of the big foundational models, it's expensive, right? And you need to shape your product experience around that usage. And what does that mean, right? That you need to count and you need to account for the number of tokens, the number of requests, the rate limits, and how do you implement that logic in your application? With analytics, with production-ready analytics, and that's what we provide. So we have customers piping all their LLM application events to Propel. We do all the counting and and then all the APIs on top so that you can integrate. So when you kind of push your data to Snowflake, you can pull it up from Propel, expose it to your app, and enforce limits, enforce like plans that you want. From what we've talked to customers is one of kind of like the missing pieces to get these applications to production. Everybody gets like that 85%. It's like, and how do we get it to production? How do we get for this to not cost like $1 bazillion? And that's the answer.
Makes total sense.
It's analytics.
And so where should people go to learn more about Propel?
So people should go to propeldata.com/snowflake. There we have all information. We have all our documentation published. You can sign up, kick the tires, and take it for a spin. And can't wait to see what everyone will build.
That's great. Nico, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today. It's been fantastic learning all about how Propel is powered by Snowflake.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me.
And folks, if you want to learn how to build your next application on Snowflake, check out developers.snowflake.com. And if you want to see other interviews like this with technical leaders in the space, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. My name is Daniel Myers. This has been another episode of Powered by Snowflake.